The following program features language some listeners may find offensive. Listener discretion is advised.
I've been fortunate enough to have, I've played Leeds Festival, Reading Festival, supported Lookin Chain, Ice Cube, whoever. So I got recommended to their management, and I got this phone call, which was quite surreal, saying, "Yeah, this is Jay-Z and Beyonce's tour management. Would you like to come and do the support act?" I was like, "Yeah, that'd be great." Of course, I was like, "Is this an actual conversation I'm having?
Is this real?" Right.
Is this real? Yeah. And in my mind, I was like, okay, this is too good. This is it. I was trying to think, what is a bigger hip hop show than this? This is like the biggest. I think it's the biggest hip hop tour of all time.
You are listening to Hip Hop Cymru Wales, a podcast exploring the trails and untold tales of Welsh hip hop. My name is Lloyd Bailey and I'm a podcaster, best known for the Fly Fidelity podcast, and I'm talking to key players about the notable and nuanced evolution of Welsh hip hop history.
Stop on my man who gon' rock a jam.
Dedicate this to all Welsh DJs.
Take it back to brass knucks and blast those. Must be a bar for every nebulous star.
Yellow brick days of Welsh heritage.
Don't mess with the wicked. Smash down the walls, the revolution's coming at you. We rolled into town with mics in our holster.
Captain of our ship, with a master of our fate.
With a greed to succeed where most men's first. Rock stars, bars, hard on Belushi flesh. As soon as I hit the stage, my presence is felt. You wanna rock up on my mic, I'll bang ya.
The story ever told to me.
From the land of the mystical dragon hearts. Gritty, my life story.
Welcome to the program. This episode, a conversation with DMC finalist DJ Killer Tomato. We discuss his journey as DJ, from house parties and clubs to touring with Goldie, Lookin Chain and supporting Jay-Z and Beyonce at the Principality Stadium. All of this and so much more on this episode.
Tom Clugston, aka DJ Killer Tom. I've been DJing probably for about 25 years now, and I think a good entry point for me was probably watching DMC battles, listening to like the Scratch Perverts or Invisible Scratch Pickles, and just kind of being fascinated by the sound of scratching. And I know a lot of other scratch DJs have this experience, but it's like, how do you make that noise? How can I replicate that sound? I want to do that, so kind of being inspired, just listen to hip hop records, essentially, DJ Premier records. The choruses always had hooks that were cut up. And that was intriguing to me as an individual. It was musically different. Maybe the sound of the future, perhaps, I hadn't heard before. So yeah, that kind of sparked my interest and took me down the rabbit hole of, buying some turntables. And then, on from there, really.
So what year was this and where were you living?
So this was when I was 16. I lived in Winchester. And like a lot of when you're a kid, you just want to listen to music that is, I suppose, anti-establishment or what you're not meant to listen to, right? So hip hop is the personification of that. It's got that punk rock element, right? And it just blew my mind, like the kind of the slang used in hip hop records, trying to decipher, what people like Raekwon were saying, that kind of New York street slang, but then also how the music was made. And that essentially comes from the DJ, right? Because in hip hop culture, the DJ, I would say, is the foundation, Kool Herc, Grandmaster Flash, putting two records together to keep the breakbeats going, for b-boy battles, DJ battles, MC battles. I wanted to somehow be a part of that. So at age 16, I think I saved up all the money I ever had and bought the worst set of turntables, obviously belt drives, and maybe 4 records. And I think I only had one turntable at the start because I could only afford one. And my only option was to listen to one record or to scratch. So I just tried to work out how to do scratching. So in today's day and age, you can go on the internet and you can learn literally anything from YouTube. But back then, it was there were no tutorials, there was nothing. So yeah, it was just listening to mixtapes, getting your hands on maybe the DMC battle videos, VHSs, and watching those, seeing how people like the Scratch Perverts, Prime Cuts did things. Yeah, and trying to just copy and mimic all the different styles, and then not biting too hard, but eventually you kind of grow a style of your own, and yeah, hopefully that takes you on the journey.
So, like many people who discovered hip hop in the 90s, you became more aware of scratching. And from what I understand, you end up finding your origin scratching on your parents' record deck.
Yeah, I had one Michael Jackson. I had Michael Jackson Bad is the greatest scratch battle record, kind of unintentional battle record, because it's just full of all his kind of vocal, noises, hooks and stuff, and they sound awesome cut up. So I had that and some old school, I don't know, like a Bush hi-fi, and it's probably the same story for a lot of guys, but just mess around and just tear up your parents' record collection. Just push a record backward and forward, see what happens, see what sounds you can make. So that would have been the initial interest, and having like a cassette player on there as well, so you could press record and listen back to what you'd done or the mess you'd made, and the records you destroyed. Yeah, so that was that was, my mum probably isn't too happy about that at the time, but I think the first album I ever bought was Bad, and that was I'm going on a tangent here now, but that was, as a piece of music, that also was hugely influential to me as a kid, like, because it's got that kind of street element to it. It's got elements of hip hop in there and like hip hop culture. So yeah, that was, I didn't realize like music could sound, electronic drums, programmed drums, stuff like that. I didn't realize things could sound like that. So putting that onto my mum's turntable and then pushing that backwards and forwards and seeing what noises I could make, and trying to record like my version of a mixtape, I suppose, which wasn't very good. Yeah, so that was I suppose that was the genesis. Yeah, that was the pivotal starting point. Where I grew up in Winchester, there wasn't much hip hop. I put on the only hip hop night in my local town, which was amazing. It was great fun. Coming to Cardiff though for university, kind of fresh faced, wide eyed. There were pivotal hip hop nights going all the time. So you had Enthusiasm, obviously Captain's Night and the Toucan, and then just an array of amazing 90s hip hop artists who would just come through all the time. Keras One would play, Grandmaster Flash would play. Also, local artists though, Optimus Prime, Joel and Stag were a huge influence. I would say they were the first guys who invited me around, and they basically taught me how to scratch properly. They taught me how to kind of count bars, how to create phrases, how to build phrases. And to me, they were just like, they were gods. They were amazing. They were so good, and I was in awe being invited around to hang out in their studio and just cut and scratch up for like 3-4 hours at a time.
Hi, yes, Monkey here from Optimus Prime, aka Elmono is what I go by these days. And the first time I met Killer Tomato was at Elliot's house, who's like Dr. Wretch from Dead Residents, and he had just like got into town. I think he was studying in Cardiff, and we were just like chatting, and he was like, "Oh, you DJ?" Like Elliot was like, "Oh yeah, this guy DJs as well." And so he just like showed me a couple of things on the decks, and I was like, whoa, really sort of like taken away by like how good he was and stuff. And yeah, that's how we first met, and we'd just like link up, like that was just the thing back then. We would like, if somebody was a DJ, somebody was scratching, we would always want to link up with them. There was no kind of like kind of like standoffishness or anything like that. It was like really kind of like, we wanted to hang out, and it's probably like, just like steal skills off each other, but in like a really healthy kind of way, So, and Killer Tomato had lots of skills and like a whole different like way of scratching to us. So, so yeah, it was really nice to link up with him and hang out. And, we always used to link up a lot as we sort of got older. And, yeah, he's just like a real kind of like inspirational dude.
So those guys were a huge influence. And then on the flip side of the scratching thing, obviously people like DJ Money Shot I would go and see. And again, that would blow my mind because he was one guy who was like chopping up records, mixing together stuff that would, I suppose people call it open format. So mixing, funk, soul, disco, hip hop, all the breaks in a kind of turntablist style, but in an approachable way, right? That, a dance floor could appreciate. And that was kind of like the other end of the spectrum for me. So I was like, right, here's a guy who is rocking a dance floor with his turntable skills. And then over the other side, you've got like Monkey and Stag, who are creating music just from scratching. So that's two groups of people who had huge influence on me kind of as I kind of came into Cardiff as quite a young, I hadn't done anything really.
Right.
But yeah, they're very welcoming, and just being included in a scene was that was one thing that what's the word I'm looking for? It
validating.
Yeah, just people were very generous with their time, right?
Yeah.
Very friendly and just welcoming. So as an outsider to the scene as well, to be welcomed into that was quite humbling. At the time, I kind of look at it in, it might sound like clinical, but in like, it's almost like a business kind of perspective. Like, how can I be successful at DJing? So I looked at the routes that people would take to become known. And back then, if you're an MC, it was battling. If you're a break dancer, it was battling. And as a DJ, it was battling. So I kind of geared myself up looking at like the DMC Championships, looking at all those guys. And at the time, you could use the DMCs, the DMC World Champion or UK Champion. They would go on to great things and have, shows. You'd have a rep, right? So I just started entering local DJ battles in the Toucan, university DJ battles. And, I won some, I lost some, but just getting up on stage, super vulnerable really, because you're very exposed. If a needle skips, what have you, it's over. But that going through that rite of passage, putting yourself out there really helped me grow, I'd say, as a DJ. So yeah, the arc was kind of going through the DJ battle scene. I never thought I'd be able to go to like the UK DMC finals or anything like that. But somehow, I suppose, just endless practice, sitting in a room for like 6 hours a day, practicing cuts, trying to work out what other people are doing and create your own style. So essentially that kind of led me down that road to try and, win DMC battles, as many as I could, really, whatever I could enter and try and be successful at. So, however, there's a realization when you kind of get, say you get to the DMC finals, UK finals, Welsh DMC finals, whatever. You start to realize that people don't always want to hear a guy on the deck scratching. for like 6 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever. You've got to be able to rock a crowd.
Right.
So that's where I started looking to other people in the scene, like your kind of Money Shots. Paul B he's a good one. And just seeing how can I take this battle thing and incorporate it into something that is going to give me more longevity. I wouldn't say I was confident going into DJ battles at all. Super nervous, but you have to put on the front that you're not afraid. You know, you have to be ready for war, I suppose, because if people sense weakness in you, you know, the crowd can feel the energy, and you want the crowd on your side. So if you made mistakes, you have to kind of pretend that it's just part of the routine. You know, if you do a beat juggle and you miss a couple of bars or the needle skips, you just have to keep going. So many lessons were learned, I would say, from those experiences. But then I would say even to this day, I'm very confident in what I do, but if I don't have that little bit of like nerves of, right, I've got to switch it on, I've got to perform now, there's something wrong. So I would never say that I'd get complacent even now. Yeah, so I couldn't say that there was a pivotal point where I said, right, I'm super confident at this, I'm amazing at this.
Right.
Like the more you do, the bigger the gigs get, you've still got to have that little bit of like nervous energy to drive you, that you feed off of that.
So you're talking about an energy with being a student almost.
Yeah, totally. You're learning all the time. So as much as I may come across like confident and maybe arrogant at times, that's all part of the kind of the front, the
showmanship.
The showmanship of being on stage or being a battle DJ, or doing the Red Bull battles, whichever one it is. Yeah, but then you have to give yourself the wins as well, which I'm not the best at. So when you have successes, you have to reward yourself and say, yeah, I did well there. Otherwise you can't live in like a perpetual state of nervousness. You have to say, yeah, that was a good one, let's do the next thing. So you kind of, the more you put out into the ether as a DJ or whatever you do, you kind of get feedback. So if you do something that's good, then you think, okay, I'm on the right path. So it's a weird kind of ethereal thing to say, but like the universe kind of like pushes you in the right direction. So like say you did a DJ battle and you got second place, right? Or some guy gave you props, someone you respect, you're on the right path. But it's if it was terrible from the beginning and an awful experience, then I don't think I would have kept doing it.
Going back to the beginning, you starting off and of course doing these shows pre-battle mode. Where were you buying your records and building your arsenal?
That's a really, really good question. When I lived in the south of England, I'd go down to record fairs in places like Southampton, Portsmouth, and there was a real culture of digging. It was really exciting. So you'd get on a train and you'd be the first in the, down there. So you'd be first in the queue, so you could get in there and get all the fresh tunes and stuff that people didn't have. So record fairs, good record stores in different, if you go to a different city, if you go to London, there are tons of amazing record stores up there that would have tunes that you couldn't find. Finding really good 90s hip hop, that was hard to do. This was like before anything was online, so you really had to put the work in. And again, it's I think it's another rite of passage. So like you've got the kind of the scratch thing, you've done the battles, you've done the work. Again, with buying the music and buying the tunes, you had to do the legwork. It's not like today you can just go online, type in, okay, I want 36 Chambers by Wu-Tang, boom, eBay, done. You had to go out and find records. So knowing where the hotspots were, knowing kind of which sellers at which record fairs had the best tunes, getting there first, that gave you an edge against your other DJs. You might be the only guy in your town or city, with a copy of, I know we'll say Juicy by Biggie or whatever. But yeah, so that was also part of the fun. That little road of discovery, because you never know what you'll find at record stores, record fairs. Yeah, it's it was hard work and it was expensive. Records are not cheap. And if you had the money, you could perhaps import stuff from like the United States and whatnot. Yeah, so that was the bulk of my collection came from just doing the legwork, going digging in the traditional sense. I'd say on top of that as well, it's something that is missing probably from today's culture, having that, being the only guy who had maybe like the new Rodney P record or whatever, the tune that would get people going in the clubs. Subsequently as well, I think this is a bit of a tangent from the main question, but being like the DJ used to be the purveyor of music. So you go to a club to see a DJ because you know that they'd have the best tunes or the new tunes. Whereas now, everybody's got the entire world of music on their iPhone. So they don't need to be introduced to new music, which is there's positives and negatives to both. I'm not saying that Spotify is terrible or what have you, but it's just a cultural shift. And I feel quite privileged to have grown up through that, gone through those ranks of having to find records.
You mentioned the words road to discovery within that process, and you just spoke to that road being very much competitive. How much was that road based on secrecy for yourself as a DJ back then, in those early days?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So there you always get these like old DJs tales of DJs like putting stickers on their dub plates or what have you. So when you're playing a record, another DJ doesn't look over and see what you're playing. But I've other DJs were very protective over which records they had or where they found their records or which record shop they purchased their records from. If it was Catapult Records in Cardiff or local record fair, or if someone had found a collection of records in a charity shop. But yeah, it was there always seems to be, it might be a hip hop thing, that hip hop is quite a competitive art form, that like you want to be better than your other DJ, or you want to be a better MC than the next man. Yeah, so having the best or the freshest tunes, I think that translates to other genres of music as well. But hip hop has definitely got a competitive element just because of the way it was formed through, battles, breakdance battles, graffiti battles, DJ battles. But not to say that it wasn't in like a, it's a friendly rivalry. It's not like, first one into the record store, I'm pushing people away from the good records. Yeah. But again, it's like, you had to be super economical with what, you've got 100 quid to spend on records. So what are you going to buy? It's like 6 to 7, maybe £10 a tune. So you have to be you have to take a punt on what's going to work. Can I make use of the A side, the B side? Should I get an LP where I can play all the tunes, or I'm going to get one song out of this? So there's kind of a layer of like decision making when buying your records to kind of stay ahead of like the next DJ.
And then it's the fact that you might possibly buy doubles that same day as well, which would limit your budget as well, right?
Yeah, so that's a another very good point, that if you are a battle DJ, you need 2 of each record if you're doing beat juggles, or if you want to scratch a cappella over an instrumental. So you may have to, just sacrifice buying sometimes 4 copies of the record as well, because you'd have 2 to practice on, and because when you spin a record backwards and forwards, you get cue burn, so you get that kind of that hissy noise over a certain part of the record. So come DJ battle time, you want 2 fresh copies so that your routine sounds crisp and clean. So I've bought 4 copies of one record to try to build routines. Funnily enough, you'd always find that a lot of the top turntablists, all their routines would be made of what I'd call HMV 4 for 20 quids. So HMV would have the more commercial hip hop records would always be on offer in HMV. So it would be, okay, what can I make out of this, like a shanty tune or this Ja Rule tune? Can I build a routine from this? Because I know I can come back here and buy another couple of copies for cheap. If you're buying rare records, trying to think of something, I know a Far Side 12-inch would be quite expensive back then, or you wouldn't want to tear that up and destroy it, would you? So there was a decision-making process within that, to buy records that you could use for battling, that you could also buy again, that weren't too expensive, but also kind of were not too rubbish. Because if you you're not gonna get props if you're I don't know, juggling a Madonna record or something, but that might be quite cool. So that's it's an expensive hobby, put it that way.
We're talking about layers, aren't we? There's really layers to this process and decision making you're talking about.
Yeah, plenty of decisions. And maybe in hindsight, I look back at it now, from a critical mindset and think, that's what I was doing. And at the time, I was involved in it, so I was like, right, I just need to have these records, or But also as well, it's like nowadays you can buy, records that are pressed for beat juggling and stuff like that. Sometimes you would buy 2 copies of a record, and the only way you can test if it's good at beat juggling is buying 2 and beat juggling it and creating a routine. And sometimes you have 2 of one record. A great record, your Far Side record might be lovely to listen to, but you can't build a routine from it. It just doesn't work. So it's an expensive way to DJ.
You talked about owning about 4 records in the earliest days. As your DJing progresses, who would have been some of those go-to artists, those trusted artists that you would have in your collection as a given every month? Who are those artists that you were buying their records without fail?
Wow, that's a great question. So I think there's the first Mr. Scruff album, Keep It Unreal, I think is the one. That was a great album to have as a DJ, just playing, in clubs and stuff, because it had a couple of hip hop tracks on there, had a tune with Roots Maneuver, and then it had some more up tempo stuff as well that was credible, like kind of more house tempo. So from one record, you could appease multitudes of people. At the start, I was buying a lot of UK hip hop, which looking back probably wasn't as dance floor friendly as I thought it was, but I loved it. So the Skits album is probably one that a lot of people talk about because every tune on there was a banger. Countryman,
classic.
Absolute classic. You can't put foot wrong with that album. But again, it's an album that you buy once and you can get a lot of use out of it. Illmatic is another one where you can get a lot of play out of that. So it was just trying to think of other artists, and then funk records as well. So you get like good funk compilations that were coming out at the time, because the culture of sampling and like throwback to the original samples was big. So you could buy very good albums with an assortment of artists on there, that have got all the kind of big kind of hip hop breaks, break beats and stuff like that. So then you've got stuff that you can use for like b-boy battles, DJ battles, and also you can play them in just normal clubs because, you know, funk and disco works very well. So yeah, I think I couldn't pinpoint like 4 artists that I'd go back to, but at the start, kind of, yeah, UK hip hop. I was buying a lot of UK hip hop.
What were you
Mark B
buying?
and Blade, I used to buy.
Nice.
Mark B and Blade, Skinnyman, Roots Maneuver, Jest, obviously, Task Force, For Life Cypher, all the stuff for the heads, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wicked.
It's amazing to me to look back and think there was a time when I could go into clubs on a weekly basis with those kind of tunes and just you know, rock a crowd. That is sadly missed.
Speaking of rocking crowds, I can't think
Yeah.
of any other definitive time in Cardiff that can eclipse that era of higher learning, which at that moment was the epicenter of hip hop, wasn't it?
Yeah, I owe a lot to higher learning because those were my first battles. That, you know, the higher learning MC battle, DJ battle, going up against people like Keltec, that was amazing. Yeah, so, and then, you know, Captain and Dregs, they're bringing in some amazing artists, you know, real history of hip hop kind of people. High Learning was amazing. So obviously Rough Styles, Captain and Dregs kind of running the night. It was one of those things where in Cardiff you'd have on some nights, you know, 2 major hip hop events on at the same night. You'd have something in Welsh Club, maybe KRS-One, then you'd have like Grandmaster Flash on at Higher Learning. So you're totally spoilt for choice. And yeah, I think the venue, the Toucan Club, was a big part to play because it was a great venue. And those guys really invested, Captain Dregs and Rough Styles, super invested in the culture, you know, putting on, you know, battles, you know, DJ battles, MC battles, and then bringing down, yeah, just, I saw Ty there, I saw Jest, I think I saw Task Force. The list is too long for me to remember, but
yeah,
super pivotal place, and also a place to network and meet people, right? So meet like Money Shot, DJ Spud, obviously the Optimus Prime boys, Second Son. I think even met the GLC boys there, you know, in the kind of early years before I knew they were the GLC boys. So yeah, it was a community kind of hub as well as being somewhere to be kind of entertained. And yeah, I have to take my hat off to those guys for really, yeah, they put their heart and soul into it.
They
definitely.
did. They did. Even the flyers back then were emblematic of that time and energy.
Yeah, totally. Looking back, I think like Rough Styles as well had a super, I'm sure you've spoken to him, but he had a passion for hip hop because he was writing Hip Hop Connection at the time.
That's right.
He had like the Tales from the Crypt or something. He had the column at the back of the magazine that I always used to love to read, and his like unadulterated opinion on hip hop, like kind of non-PC, just his raw thoughts, and that energy was always brought through at High Learning. I thought, yeah, it was a driving force. So yeah, a lot of respect. But also, you know, they put on things like all the kind of Rough Styles World Record Attempt, all those kind of events as well. Yeah, it's a golden age, man. It
really is. It was the first time I saw you.
Yes, there we go. So yeah, it was a great place to network and just meet other DJs or people doing the same things. But also it brought people from other parts of Wales as well, like, you know, all the guys from Swansea, Mudmouth, Ralph Ripshit. Yeah, so you'd have other MCs from different parts of Wales come, or DJs from different parts of Wales, which I've always found really interesting.
Yeah, it became this intersection, didn't it, for so many places across the UK, and it just opened up, like you say, this hub of talent and people meeting each other.
Yeah, totally. Who did I meet that was super pivotal? I'm trying to think now. I think, yeah, meeting, like, obviously, because I did a lot of stuff with Second Son. Obviously, he's Cardiff based, but meeting Skinnyman for the first time, that was pretty cool. And again, just people like Jess at the peak of his like High Plains Drifter kind of stuff. To me, you know, as an upcoming DJ, it was amazing to see people like that face to face. Probably you probably have the same experience, but
Oh yeah,
yeah,
Very
it's
much so.
just awesome, absolutely awesome.
So there's a moment around that time we're talking about where everything comes full circle for yourself when you become a DJ for Humrock the Gritty and SFDB Records. How does that come about?
So at the time, Gritty, Derek was the kind of higher learning MC battle champ,
Right.
and he was working with Second Son, and I was in a similar position. I think I just won their like DJ battle, and Gritty was looking for a DJ to tour with, you know, or someone to, you know, if he gets shows, to go out with him and play the instrumentals, do the cuts and the choruses. So he's got a live show. So we linked up, started doing scratches for a couple of Second Son's tunes. Yeah, and ultimately you go on to, you know, work with other artists on his roster on the SFDB label. So working with Black Tricks, Clarity, Comrade Watts. Man, his label was pretty deep at the time. He did tunes with Blade as well, so there was the connection with Blade, Defexo, Deficit, and also he was working with who is it now who's super successful? You'll know. I can't think of his name.
2 hours later.
Lewis Parker. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I totally forgot Lewis Parker. Working with Gritty was amazing because, you know, we come from very different backgrounds, but it was very welcoming. You know, I was just like young, skinny little kid who was like a scratch DJ, and then you got this like literally like this punchline rapper. You know, his style was super hard, uncompromising, and I was quite humbled to be working with him and to essentially, yeah, go out on tour with him. So that was, yeah, that was a confidence boost, I'd say. That was a pivotal moment, and being around a recording studio, seeing Leon Second Son working, you know, with all these people who I idolize, you know, like he did a tune with Jess, Lewis Parker, Task Force, did a tune with Lookin Chain. Yeah, that was pretty special.
Amazing. Take me into that moment. Is there a story that, off top of your head, you think encapsulates that bond and moment in time?
Wow, that's a deep question. So I'm trying to think of like the early gigs me and Hummerak did. So this is the time where like the Goldie Lookin Chain guys are taking off. So do you want me to explain the story of how we kind of started doing
Please.
those? Yeah. Okay.
Please.
So I don't want to jump too far into like the future and ruin your chronological timeline. The chronology will be wrecked by my rambling. So, so basically, yeah, me and Derek hadn't spent much time together, and we got this opportunity to open a Goldie Lookin Chain gig. So at the time, the GLC were massive. They like charted, I think, number 2 or 3 in the charts, and were touring the entire country at like big venues. And through Leon's connection, because Leon knew all the Goldie Lookin Chain boys, there was an opening at the Cardiff show. Do you want to come and support? And Derek Gritty had his single kind of in the bag, ready to kind of take out on the road, so to speak. So it was like a perfect opportunity for him to start doing all his material that was new. And yeah, we basically just got a last minute call to do the Cardiff set to warm up for Lookin Chain. We had to get, I've got them, I can see them now in my record collection actually, my coveted SFDB limited, they're the only ones, dub plates of all the instrumentals produced by Second Son, and I think one's produced by Lewis Parker and Jess. But yeah, we had these acetate dubs cut because, you know, CDJs were not really a thing, and we had to have some instrumentals for him to rap over. So we got those cut in a hurry, and then took my Technics turntables to Cardiff Union, and we did the show. Yeah, so I think we had Derek had maybe 4 or 5, maybe 6 tunes. So we did a 20-minute set. I did a bit of scratching to kind of fill it out. But yeah, that was the genesis of kind of that touring moment. And off the back of that, we got offered, okay, we're doing Swansea next. You want to come and do Swansea? The guy, I think John the White Rapper, do you remember him?
Vaguely, very vaguely.
Yeah,
Where was he from?
So he was signed to, I think he was signed to the same label as Lookin Chain.
Right.
But then he got dropped for some reason. Maybe, I have no idea. I'm not going to say bad things about John the White Rapper, but so there was a gap. There's an opening for us, and we did Cardiff, we did Swansea, and I think there was maybe Carmarthen perhaps. So after that, I said to kind of Second Son and Gritty, let's do the whole tour. Let's see if we can do the whole tour. So there was a moment where I got on the phone to the manager of Lookin Chain, proper big dog, and I just said, "Hey, this is DJ Killer Tom. You have no idea who I am, but we've been supporting the last 3 gigs. Can we do the whole tour, please?" And he just said yes. And at that moment in time, that was a bit of a punt. And going back to the kind of confidence thing, that was probably one of the most nerve-wracking moments of my life, just phoning up, you know, manager of a charting band and asking if I could go on their UK tour, you know, with a rapper. So yeah, he said yes, and we ended up doing the whole tour. And I was in my second year of uni at the time, and I had to like ditch uni and be like, right, see you later, guys. I'm going on tour. So yeah, that was a pivotal moment. So subsequently, me and Derek just we built a set, and the more shows we did, the tighter it got. It was a learning experience for me because I'd never worked with a rapper before, and DJing for a rapper is very different to DJing for a club, you know, full of people.
What were those biggest differences initially for you, navigating those differences between being a DJ at the club and being this rapper's DJ now? Completely different relationship and energy, like you say.
Yeah, so
how are you navigating that?
So yeah, going from, I suppose it's being versatile enough to go from being a scratch DJ where it's all about you and your kind of bravado and trying to show off essentially and win, to like the next step of that is playing in clubs and entertaining people, and then the next step is working with Humarak, and you are kind of playing, you're keeping everything in check so he can perform. So you're not like the kind of showcase. He is the main act. You are there to kind of give him space to breathe. So in between the choruses, provide cuts. So anyone out there who's a rapper will know that if you just keep rapping and rapping, you need to have breaks if you're the only guy on stage. Yeah, and also being like the first guy you walk onto stage, you know, you have to engage the crowd a little bit, so when he comes out with a mic, that there's something, you know, some kind of an atmosphere, but understanding that it's not just about you, it's a team, and trying not to make any mistakes as well, because we were playing on these acetate vinyls, and you know, if the needle skipped, then his flow is off. So that was also a total nightmare trying to navigate that. But yeah, the transition into I suppose it's more of like a kind of, you're managing the stage and the environment and the music for him so he can perform and get the best out of his performance, right?
And there's a value in that. There's a value that isn't really understood and respected today.
Yeah, it's being able to not let your ego get in the way, because a lot of people, they get on stage and they're just like, it's me, me, me. It's all about me. It's like, no, you're doing a job now. You know, you've got to make the transition, make the show happen. It's a very important role because, you know, without the music and without the DJ, there's no show. And it's also, you know, mistakes will be made, so it's learning how to deal with that quickly. I remember, you know, you're in front of a crowd of people who want to see Lookin Chain, and they're like, "Who's this kid?" And people just throwing bottles of beer at you sometimes. So
Wow.
yeah. So that didn't happen many times, but having the tenacity just to keep going, keep your head down, and yeah, navigate difficult situations. Touring was it was the first time I'd kind of traveled places. There was like, you know, 4 of us like bunged into a small car just driving around the country. You know, you got a nominal fee for doing these gigs, but it was about the exposure and getting out there. So the first time I'd kind of traveled to places, parts of the country that I'd never go to of my own free will. You know, driving up to Scotland, a lot of travel on the motorways, hard touring. That built up a lot of resilience, I'd say. And also playing to crowds that were there to see, like I said, the Lookin Chain and not you. That taught me lessons in how to kind of stay calm in difficult situations and also please a crowd that is essentially not there for you. And also going on from that, like the Blade tour and the Skinnyman tour, those were amazing shows, because they were, you know, UK hip hop heads there for UK hip hop. It was a real privilege to be. Again, I looked up to Blade, The Unknown, all those kind of records, and then like the early stuff he's done. You know, Mark B and Blade album was amazing. Again, Skinnyman, absolute idol, and then to find myself, you know, working alongside these people, that was another humbling experience. And also you learned that, you know, these guys, they are people, you know, so not to be too fanboyish and just to get along with them as humans and like resonate with them as people. Yeah, I would say the Skinnyman tour was the one. Like touring with Skinnyman opened my eyes to a lot of things, and it was pretty amazing. I have to give Skinnyman a lot of props for letting myself and Gritty tour with him and be so welcoming. You know, just letting us. They drove us around in their car. You know, they didn't know us, and we'd met on the Lookin Chain tour, and DJ Flip, Skinny's manager at the time, and DJ was like, "Right, do you guys want to come and, you know, do our support for our tour?" We're like, "Yeah, that'd be amazing."
Amazing.
So yeah, I was kind of thrust into this world that I was a fan of all these artists, and then suddenly I was, you know, touring with them, hanging out with them, supporting them. Yeah, so it was a fast learning curve. Yeah, most definitely.
Well, circling back to GLC and yourself being a fan of these artists we're talking about, a lot of people at that point in time, and now especially, they're not fans of GLC for whatever reasons. Some people are, some people aren't. What do you think are some of those biggest misconceptions that people have of GLC?
Great question. I've answered this question a lot because hip hop has this, for good or for worse, this thing about keeping it real, or, you know, hip hop has to be a certain way. And people like it or not, like Lookin Chain are the most successful rap act out of Wales. And at every given point, I remember being with Maggot in London, and some people were like trolling him, saying, "Oh, you know, GLC are rubbish, etc. You know, they've done nothing for hip hop." And I spoke to these guys, and I was like, Lookin Chain at every point have taken local artists and UK hip hop artists on tour with them. So, you know, up with the rising tide, everyone kind of comes up. So Jest went on tour with Lookin Chain. Blade went on tour with Lookin Chain. Skinnyman went on tour with Lookin Chain. Killer Keller, Asteroid Boys, myself and Gritty, Black Tricks. There's probably a whole host of others that I haven't even included, but the support slots were always filled by UK hip hop artists. And the guys were huge fans, well, still are huge fans of hip hop, UK hip hop. So I think the misconceptions are that they were perhaps in it for the wrong reasons that are wrong, you know, huge fans of the art form. I'd say they're very talented at what they do. You know, what Gold Lookin Chain is, they're excellent at what they do. And there's always, in Gold Lookin Chain records, if you listen to like the music, the sampling, even the lyrics, you know, that there are nods to kind of classic hip hop records and the culture. So there's always sub meta references to the culture. So I wouldn't say it was in any way disrespectful or insulting to the culture of hip hop, as some people might say. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. It's Blastmaster KRS-One here, coming live from the Bronx. Actually, it's not. That's a complete lie. It's Eggsy from Goldie Lookin Chain, moderately successful pop group, rappers from Newport, and just here to say hi and talk to you about some stuff. So, Killer Tom, DJ Killer Tom, what a guy. He's to us, he's a legend, and to a lot of other people, he's a legend. He's a DMC finalist. You know, he's out there spinning the ones and twos all the time, and I've known him for incredible amount of time now. Looking back, it's hard to remember exactly when I met him, but I know when he first popped up on the scene. For anybody who knows Tom, he's a bit like the Incredible Hulk, but he's not green and his trousers aren't hanging off of him, but he's got the build of Incredible Hulk. Now, very much like his DJing, he's been working on his body for years and years. When I first met him, he was tiny little boy. I mean, I'm a very slight man, but he was on a par with me. And this young lad turned up and he's like, "Hiya, boys." Hi. And we're like, "All right, Tom, how's it going?" And, you know, he DJ'd. And I just remember there was a very, very, very rapid movement from us just recording in a bedroom to suddenly getting signed to a major label and it all going everywhere. And Tom was just there. I really honestly can't remember where he came from, but he was just there, the right place at the right time. And he just had a really good attitude. He never, I think it's important in whatever you do not to be big-headed and a dickhead about what you do. And Tom wasn't by any means. He's just like, "Yeah, I do some DJing stuff. It's quite good." And it's like, "Cool. Do you want to do some cuts and scratches?" And he's like, "Yeah, okay." And it was like, "Yeah, he's brilliant," you know. So we got to know him through there. I remember in the early days, he was in uni, and he made a fantastic video of him putting a pizza on a set of decks. Still don't know why he did it, but that was a great thing to see. You don't get many DJs, you know. Cutmaster Swift, I don't know if he's ever made a video about putting a pizza on a set of decks, but you know, this was some next level stuff from Tom. He was good, you know. He was just really good at putting pizzas on decks, but also at putting records on decks and you know, cuts and scratches. He was brilliant. So he's always been there on the scene. And what's great is on, you know, most of our albums, he's going to be the guy that you're hearing cutting stuff up. The mixtapes we've done, you know, the majority of the time Tom's in there just absolutely blitzing it and just making them sound really, really good. So he's always been there quietly in the background, just sticking everything together with his glue, you know. And when I say sticking everything together with his glue, I'm talking about glue. I'm not talking about bodily fluids. That would be wrong. But you know, he's just amazing. He's a really good guy. And if you get the chance to book him, you know, do it, because he will make a party. He just will make a party. You know, a good guy, knows what he's doing, and great look as well. Lovely arms, massive body, great lad. He once bench pressed me before a festival to get me in the zone for the show. Imagine that, one man bench pressing another man backstage at the festival, I think it was. Fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a conversation with Eggsy, like he knows loads about hip hop. Like Rhys from the Gold Lookin Chain, all he plays is Ghetto Boys. Whenever we go on tour, Billy Webb, I remember him having the Nuke Proof Suit album on the tour bus, just blasting that out the chest. Nuke Proof Suit. And again, just big fans of UK hip hop and hip hop in general. So maybe that surprised me, but I don't think there was time for me to be surprised, because I was just kind of like in the midst of it. I just like thrust into it, but they're all very knowledgeable about music, not just hip hop, also all music, funk, soul, disco. So I understand people's criticisms of the gold looking chain, but then equally, if someone does well and tries to bring everyone up with them, I don't see that as a bad thing.
Absolutely.
Obviously, it's a humorous act. There's a joke in there, and sometimes I think maybe hip hop can be a little bit too serious. So yeah, I might be crucified for saying that, but whatever. I'd also say as well, I never thought, like, because obviously the joke is, like, linguistically it's very Newport, right, and South Walian, and a lot of the humor is about South Wales.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised how that culture, or the jokes about that culture spread across the country, because it's such a localized thing, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, but for some reason I think it was a perfect time as well, because you had, like, super furry animals were massive at the time, so there's a lot of Welsh, like, music coming out. So there was a big wave, I'd say, of what Welsh bands, Welsh acts, that they kind of fitted nicely into.
You're also doing a lot of mixtapes around this time. When you reflect on the impact of those mixtapes you've done in the past, what do you think was the secret sauce that made those tapes unique?
Man, that's a great question. So I have to give my nods. My main inspiration, I listened to DJ Money Shot and the way he put mixtapes together, taking, like, acapellas and putting rap acapellas over, like a Portishead tune or stuff that shouldn't really be done, but it works, right? Almost pre-DJ Yoda, that kind of DJ Yoda cut and paste vibe. So he was a big influence on me, and it was trying to find, you don't want to do what someone else has done, right? So it was trying to find a little niche for myself. My early mixtapes were a lot of acapellas from UK hip hop records, trying to place them over different things and trying to cram as much into, like, an hour as possible. And then, man, I haven't made a mixtape for so long. It's terrible. Then my mixtapes kind of grew out into more finding, like, samples of the original records, mixing that in with a hip hop track, and just trying to create something that's different, fun, and it would maybe catch your ear as a listener. So, and I think, again, that helped my craft as a DJ, just having to dig quite deep, and make sure as a piece of listening experience it kind of works. So you've got, like, a start, a middle, and an end, and again that would translate across into, like, DJ sets. But I'd also say as well, like, being a DJ in places like Buffalo Bar, alongside, like, Jaffa, Money Shot, DJ Spud, Paul B, there's loads of great DJs, and cutting your cloth musically, learning, taking inspiration from those guys. The bar, I've always said this, the bar is so high in Cardiff for, like, the size of the city, that you had to be good, otherwise, you wouldn't rise to the top. So I think the whole kind of mixtape thing, it was done as, again, a thing. It's a promo tool, right, to get your name out there, to give someone an example of you as a DJ. It's weird to me now in today's era, because you can't put mixtapes online anymore because copyright stuff, copyright claims. So it's quite a nice organic experience getting the CDs made and giving people, handing people a physical CD. So it hopefully it carves an identity for me as a DJ, and it just made me try new ideas out and cut my cloth in a different direction, perhaps. I do recall DJ Yoda had a column in Hip Hop Connection where he'd feature mixtapes, from DJs, and getting some of my mixes featured in his column. That was a moment where I was like, okay, I'm doing something good here, right? I'm doing something that's interesting and people are liking. As innovation goes, that's a tough one. Yeah, it's because the problem is with the mixtape genre as a DJ, there's so much you can do, but also so much has been done before. So trying to find a niche, that's the trick, finding something that someone hasn't done, and also doing it for the love of it because you enjoy it. But then that probably leads nicely onto like the Red Bull freestyle stuff, because the style of DJing or the style of mixtapes I started doing kind of led away from hip hop. So there's hip hop in there, but I'd maybe mix like on the halftime up to drum and bass, back down into like a soul sample. And I would say the mixtapes I started to make there would be the perhaps the blueprint for my kind of DJ style going on from there, being multi-genre, having to learn loads of different genres of music, not just hip hop, not just funk, not soul, just being able to play anything and being able to blend it together in a kind of, like we said, something, with a start, middle, and an end. So that potentially gave me it put me in good standing to drive my DJing into like another place, if that's not the most convoluted answer.
You talked about the bar being so high back then. What did it mean to be representing Wales in, you mentioned it earlier, the DMC Championship finals?
That was a huge thing for me, because as a kid growing up, as we said earlier, watching the DMC videos. So bear in mind, again, I go back to this thing of like pre and post internet. Now I can just go online and look at all the best scratch DJs of all time and just watch them all in a couple of hours. But you'd had to wait for the DMCs to have happened, buy the video, watch the video, and see like what new styles and techniques had come out, who'd done which scratch, which beat juggle, whatever. So I was just in awe that I could get to the UK final as a just as a DJ. Just being there was that's like a lifelong dream of mine. And also in being there, you were on one of the videos, and I never thought I could be on a DMC UK final video. Stupid as that sounds, it might sound irrelevant to people of today's age, but back when I was 16, 17, that was a seal of approval. That was amazing. So yeah, going to DMC battles, I didn't win the UK finals, obviously, but I was there, and putting yourself out there, you learn a lot. Again, you're putting, I seem to have put myself into lots of uncomfortable positions. So whether it's like the local DJ battles or the DMC battles, or like, going on stage before Goldie Chain with Gritty, it's always get into that uncomfortable zone and see what happens, and then you kind of learn and grow from that. So yeah, the DMCs were super exciting, super stressful, and also I was competing in the DMCs at a time. So I'll go into the super technical side briefly if you want.
Please do, man.
Yeah, so DJ battle, you take your records, you've got your scratch records, your beat juggle records. So I was literally doing it from in the old school way of having 2 copies of, we'll say, Biggie Hypnotize. I'll juggle that, then I'll do a scratch over Mobb Deep instrumental with some scratch sounds, and then on to the next part. At this point in time, DJs had realized that if you can program your battle set into like one audio file on Ableton, Cubase, or what have you, and get that pressed to a dub plate, you can press multiple dub plates, so you've always got loads of copies of your routine, and you don't have to take the needle off of the record. You can just literally, the sounds are lined up, and you can go through the sounds that, you know, they're one after the other. So the transitions between sections of the routine are it's not easier, but they're easier to achieve. And that's not to say that the routines themselves are worse. There are some amazing DJ routines out there, but I was competing at the time that this kind of transition across to custom DJ battle dub plates was happening. And, you know, it's not a case of me winning or losing, but there was a significant difference to the people who had these custom scratch battle records with their routines on, and it was hard to compete and keep the energy up to a similar standard that these guys had. So it's not a complaint, it is what it is. But yeah, it was a point in time when the DMC battles were switching over to this new way of putting sets together. As someone who grew up in England, moving to Wales, then to represent Cardiff, Wales at these battles, that's a huge honor, you know. So yeah, I felt again humbled, and you know the culture in Wales is very welcoming. So I think I spent most of my adult life in Wales now, but at the time when I was doing these battles, I hadn't. So yeah, it was quite an honor to kind of, you know, carry the torch, fly the flag. Yeah, and also again, it's you go to London, you know, where all the kind of big dog DJs are, and you're like the little guy. You're kind of like the underdog. So if you can achieve as the underdog, that's always a nice. That's quite a satisfying experience.
Hi there, this is Cutmaster Swift, the 1989 DMC World Champion, and I'm going to talk about Killer Tomato, a competitor in the DMC Championships during the 90s. Killer Tomato came into my radar, like most DJs, through the DMC Championships. And it was the time when basically it got very exciting because new techniques were coming into the competition, like the flare scratch, which pretty much has redefined how DJs DJ today. It's people like Qbert and those San Francisco guys that are pretty much predominant in that style. And DJ Flair was the DJ that actually got that style from actually copying a Cash Money scratch, he told me personally. And it just evolved into something else. It wasn't it. It was trying to do it and it evolved into something else. And Qbert was like, that's not it. That's something new. So they called it the flare scratch. And this is the one-click flare, I believe they were doing. But Killer Tomato grabbed my attention because he pretty much had the style down. And in his own style, his own flow, his own pattern. You know, this is what made DJs exciting like Killer Tomato, because they were just different. You know, a different timing and stuff. And yeah, he was, that's how he came on my radar. Very nice guy as well. You know, very cool, very calm, you know. Yeah. So, and I obviously saw him in a few other competitions as well. Actually, the last time I saw him now would have been 2019 or 2018. And that was at the DJ exhibition in Birmingham. I think he was working for one of them DJ companies doing a set. Because that's again how you meet some DJs. It's bumping into the same people all the time that you can't kind of get a repertoire with them and see where they're coming at and where they're from, you know. And if they've always been innovative and doing something a bit different, then they grab your attention. And he was one of those guys that did.
Can you remember who is judging?
Man, I think the judges at the UK 2010 UK DMC final, Prime Cuts, Tony Vegas of the Scratch Perverts, Mr. Thing. I think Killer Keller was judging.
Wow.
Cutmaster Swift. Yeah, big names. So again, all the people I kind of looked up to as a DJ growing up, and it's like suddenly, right, okay, they're all sat in front of me now watching me do a scratch routine. This is nerve-wracking, you know.
No pressure. Was it challenging not allowing that nervousness to translate into your routine? You've talked about, you know, many of times through this point, being nervous at points. Is that challenging to not let that
horrendous.
translate?
Yeah, to the art of being nervous but not showing nerves,
right?
Because people can just sense the energy, and then if they sense that energy, it's a downward spiral. So you can one thing I always used to do is, like, when you perform doing DJ battle routines, is you need to look up at the crowd a few times. You can't just have your head down at the vinyl, at the mixer. You know, you need to engage the crowd. So I just pick a spot at the back of the room. I'm sure people who do public speaking or, you know, performing do this all the time, but you just pick a spot at the back of the room, and that's my fixed spot. So I look up and just try and look at that spot, so it looks like I'm engaging with them. I'm not nervous. Yeah. So there are little kind of things you could do, but equally you can also go the other way, whereby you can engage with the crowd too much and you get too overexcited, and that endorphin rush, that excitement, you just think you're amazing.
Can you give me an example of that happening?
Yeah, I think I just think, like, there have been DJ battles. So I'm trying to think now specifically. There's probably a DMC Heat in London that I entered, and I psyched myself up too much, and I went into it too hard, and you make a mistake, and there's a sweet spot for performers. I'm sure, like, you know, pianists, singers, they've all got this of being elevated enough that you're on, not too flat in energy that you do a bad job. But if you're too hyped, you'll just start forgetting what you're doing and just kind of think you're not thinking, you're just making mistakes, right? So you can be too cognitive of it, and overthink. It's that you don't want to think too much, you don't want to feel too much. There's somewhere in the middle, right? So yeah, so that happened where I got too excited and was like, yeah, I'm going to be amazing, this is going to be great, I'm going to smash it, and then you make one mistake and then the whole thing just falls apart. So again, it's a learning experience, so you have to be out of your comfort zone. And again, it's heartbreaking because, you know, you go to these places, you get 6 minutes to do your routine, and that's it. You can't have another go. And you know in your mind that you've done this routine 100, 200, 300 times perfectly. And then, you make the one mistake, and it's trying to stay on course after you've made a mistake as well. That's also tricky. But I've got multiple experiences in life of kind of doing those kind of things. So yeah.
Take me into your journey as a DJ and in finding that middle spot between not being stubborn with your own agenda curatorially and also acknowledging the crowd and what they want, because it's a balancing act, isn't it?
Totally. So as a DJ, I never plan any sets. Every time I've planned, like, we'll say a club set, like DJing in a club, what have you, you are there to entertain the people who have come to see you. So there have been points whereby when I was younger and I wanted to go, right, I've got all this hip hop in my bag, I want to play you the hardest underground hip hop because you need to hear this music because it's the best. But you learn quite quickly that, Shook Ones by Mobb Deep is an amazing tune and it gets the crowd going, but only in a certain section of like the public are into that. So it's DJing, I would say I learned from making mistakes that DJing is essentially the psychology of people in the room and understanding from their behavior if they're happy with what you're playing and responding to that quickly enough, I suppose, in real time, to keep everything on course and just keep people happy. So you're building energy you're building a vibe, and that vibe is dictated by the people. So the people, it's like the democracy of music. You know, if enough people are dancing, you know you're doing a good job. If they're not, then you've got to switch it up, change it up. So a lot of the times I'd say DJs let their egos get in the way and say, right, I've got these tunes, you need to hear them. But if those people in the room don't want to hear those songs, or are not really into it, then you have to have the ability to, you know, go off piece, so to speak, and quickly find what they'd like to listen to and keep the party going. It's a bit like that kind of Jazzy Jeff. He always talks about the best DJs are the ones not who can like DJ for an hour on one genre, but who can rock the party, you know, all night long. Yeah.
Well, speaking of rocking a party, what's the story behind supporting Jay-Z and Beyonce at the Principality?
That was wild. So Jay-Z and Beyonce, I was doing my DJ school from Catapult Records at the time, and the Cardiff show was the first show on their entire world tour. So it was massive show, because they had this new production that had never been seen before. And for the support, the tour manager phoned up Catapult Records and say, who do you know locally who'd be a good support DJ? And the guys at Catapult obviously recommended myself, because I'd done tours with Goldie, I've done arenas, I've done festivals. I'm, you know, we've talked about, you know, pleasing the crowd and making sure they're happy, and it's not, you know, your narcissistic approach to music. So, and also like being the warm up guy as well for a multitude of artists. That there is an art form in. I warmed up for Ice Cube once, and
I remember.
Yeah, that was sick. And obviously, you don't play NWA records, Ice Cube records. You just keep it bubbling. You play classics, but it's very simple. But you'd be surprised how many DJs, when they support big artists, will just do a tribute set to that artist before they come on and play all their big hits and ruin, you know, the big moment for the main act. So
right.
I've been fortunate enough to have, you know, I've played Leeds Festival, Reading Festival, supported Goldie, Ice Cube, whoever. So I got recommended to their management, and I got this phone call, which was quite surreal, saying, yeah, this is Jay-Z and Beyonce's tour management. Would you like to come and do the support act? I was like, yeah, that'd be great. Of course. You know, I was like, is this an actual conversation I'm having?
Is this real? Right.
Is this real? Yeah. And in my mind, I was like, okay, this is too good. This is it. I was trying to think, what is a bigger hip hop show than this? This is like the biggest. I think it's the biggest hip hop tour of all time. I mean, you could say like maybe Dr. Dre's Up in Smoke tour. That was pretty massive at the time. But from a commercial perspective, Jay-Z and Beyonce are huge, right? So I didn't think I always prepare for like the worst case scenarios. All right, this isn't going to happen until I'm in that stadium, you know, playing the music.
Right.
They're going to phone me or say this is off, or, you know, we don't need you anymore. So yeah, that was literally, it was just, I wouldn't say it was luck, because you make your own luck, you know, by your connections and the work you do of your life, you know, and that's why you get recommended for things. So yeah, that was how I got recommended for that. So because it was the first day of their world tour, which it sounds pretty crazy being in Cardiff, but you know, the Principality Stadium is enormous. They were rehearsing right up until the doors opened. So the doors were at 7, and their rehearsals were right up until about 5 to 7. And I was there from 4 o'clock, just ready to kind of, you know, plug the decks in, have a nice little sound check, get used to the acoustics, because it was absolutely enormous, you know, 50,000 people in a stadium. And there was none of that. So it's like, right, they finished rehearsing, we're opening doors in 5 minutes. Are you ready? I was like, I'm going to have to be ready. But obviously it's like it's the biggest gig of my life, and luckily I've got a wealth of experience of working, especially with like all the kind of tech people, and just trying to be professional. A lot of people are saying, oh, did you hang out with Jay-Z and Beyonce? And at that level of gig, you have to not be like the fanboy. You've got to go in and be clinical. Show all the kind of tech guys, sound engineers that you're professional. You know what you're doing. Get set up in record time, and just start playing music. So I presumed that it would be me, and then someone like a Stormzy or someone like that would be on after me, and then it would be Jay-Z and Beyonce. But it was literally me. I did my set for, I don't know, hour and a half, and then it was Jay-Z and Beyonce.
That was it?
That was it. It was wild. Yeah, it was wild. I've never played in front of so many people, and the speakers was, I remember this distinctly because I didn't have a chance to sound check. I didn't have any monitors, so I was monitoring off from the main speakers, and they were like a football pitch's distance away from me, so I couldn't hear what I was doing. So I was literally just winging it on Serato and just using kind of memory of tunes. Okay, I know these work together, I'll put these together, this will work. So technically it's probably not the best set of my life. However, wealth of experience of doing those kind of things maybe accumulated apex in that moment in time.
So much of your passion for hip hop until that moment was you training and preparing for this moment in time. What was the reaction to this set?
From the public?
Yeah,
people are loving it. So obviously you have to play a slightly more commercial set, but yeah, it was amazing. The feedback was awesome. What can I say? People having a great time, and setting the tone for something like that as well, because you don't want people to be too up. You need them to have enough energy so that when the main act comes on, they're ready to go. So if you've been playing, I don't know, Fat Man Scoop or whatever, or Jump Around,
people
that's
never
not what
play
you play.
those records.
No. I can't stand that record. But you it's that would be the wrong thing to do. It's understanding that you've got to build the energy enough that people are starting to groove, get into it, getting excited for the main act. And again, it's like we discussed before, it's not about you, it's about the people. And just it's very easy to play just big slammers, bangers, one after the other, keeping a kind of a level that people are just about to get ready to party and dance, keeping that going. That I would say there's more nuance and detail to that. I'm making it sound like it's a super complicated art where I just press play on other people's records. There's also a sense of scale as well. It could be quite overwhelming for some people, because you are literally in the middle of the stadium in front of 50,000 people, and that can get the better of you. You can be like, right, I'm just going to default to the bangers, because obviously people are there, but they're so far away from you. You don't get that like intrinsic feedback that you do from an intimate club. So that was quite a difficult thing to navigate. If you've got like people 10 feet away from you, you're doing a good job, but trying to make sure that the people at the front, the middle, the back, they're all having a good time. And when the back of the room is a football pitch length of people away,
Fast forwarding is another turning point for you when you become Pirate Studios lead tutor.
Yeah, so I've always people have always been very generous to me as I was coming up, right? So Optimus Prime guys gave me lots of their time. I learned a lot from like hanging out at the SFDB studios. So it's amazing to be able to give back to people. Like when I was learning, if I could have bypassed certain stages, or not bypassed but accelerated, or just been pointed in the right direction, maybe I would have kind of got ahead further or made better decisions. And having the opportunity to, you know, teach DJing to people is amazing. So yeah, Pirate Studios is, for those who don't know, it's a worldwide brand, I think, of studios. And again, the recommendation I think came from Catapult Records, because I'd done the DJ school there. And
what year is this?
was, oh god, this is probably 2017 or 2018. So
okay,
they built the studios in Cardiff, and it's a multi-function studios for DJs, bands, whatever music you want to do. You can go and hire a space, and they were people could buy a session with a DJ tutor, and that DJ tutor was me. And I would be teaching people from all backgrounds, not just hip hop, you know, drum and bass, house, whatever they wanted to learn, but getting people from literally nothing up to a point whereby they can kind of take it themselves in their own direction and, you know, formulate their own style. So yeah, it was really cool to be able to engage with people at that level and teach. And again, just remembering some of the mistakes I had made, and helping people kind of navigate those in a constructive way that is maybe slightly less stressful. You still got to do the work. There's no magic ticket to being good at DJing, but I think having a certain teaching style that can get you on the right path and get people understanding that you've got to find your own style as well, that is quite powerful. Yeah.
What was the work for you back then? What was the typical session like for you teaching somebody?
I'll give you an example. So I had this one guy come to me who he was a paranoid schizophrenic, but he loved drum and bass. And that was like one of the most challenging things I've ever done. So he came to me, and I was like, what you know, what are you into? Oh, I love drum and bass. So I was like, okay, let's find some music. So I spend maybe the first 20 minutes with someone just going through music and finding the songs they like, and recognize. So it's easier to learn if you know what you're listening to, right? If you're trying to mix records that you have no idea what they are, the learning curve will be really slow. So we would find, you know, his favorite songs, put them on the decks, and then rather than overwhelm people with the technicalities of, right, you know, this does this on the mixer, this does this on the turntable or the CD deck, I would literally just get people in at the deep end, just getting that tangible feedback of what it's like to press play, hear the music playing, press stop, operate the crossfader, and literally just go from there and make as many mistakes as possible, and then we can kind of formulate a plan to becoming better. Yeah. So going back to this chap with the mental health issues, he is a great example, because in 6 to 8 weeks I had him mixing on his own for someone who had no confidence. It gave him an avenue to like express himself and something to look forward to in his week, right? It gave him structure. And for someone who wasn't very disciplined, he had to become disciplined and, you know, do his homework, practice. Yeah, so experiences like that are quite humbling, I'd say, because they're people who are generally, they're forthcoming, and, you know, they're super vulnerable, right? So they want to learn, and they're, what am I trying to say? Like if I thought it was difficult when I was learning to DJ, imagine being someone, you know, if you're like disabled, or, you know, you've got mental health problems, what have you. So the confidence thing, trying to build confidence with people who haven't had the best hand in life, that was an amazing opportunity. Yeah.
It really speaks to the inclusion you were talking about earlier when you were welcomed into the scene, doesn't it?
Yeah, totally. There's a lot to be said for that. Again, I keep kind of reiterating it, but like, yeah, the scene in South Wales is, I say the music scene in general is very welcoming, and there's a lot of like-minded people. You know, people have divisions and beef or whatever, but really people are just there, you know, to help each other, and yeah, just help each other along. It's like, you're on the same path.
Yeah.
Okay, how can I help you? You know, or what can we do? So yeah, those kind of lessons, like, yeah, moral lessons learned at the kind of beginning, definitely translate across into teaching and being able to give something back to yeah, the local community, I suppose.
What was it that led you to teach in Charlotte Church?
That is that's such a wild card, isn't it?
So random.
Like, it is. It's, again, it was, I have to give massive props to the guys at Catapult Records, Simon and Lucy, because they gave me a lot of opportunities, or put me in front of people, you know, like recommended me to the Jay-Z and Beyonce guys. Some of the festivals I did when Nokia was a big mobile phone company, they came to Catapult Records and said, you know, who do you know who can DJ for us? So subsequently, Charlotte Church wanted to learn to DJ. Her PA management went to Catapult and said, who do you know who can teach Charlotte how to DJ? So I was recommended. And again, it was one of these things, I was like, this probably won't happen. So we provisionally booked a date in, I think we did the lessons in Undertone, which was the club beneath 10 Feet Tall.
Oh yeah.
And just so that she could have an experience of like what it was like to DJ on a club system from the offset. So yeah, that's how it came about. It was a recommendation, and I kind of put the date in the diary, and I heard nothing back from it, and I was like, oh, it's one of those ones whereby she's probably too busy, you know, doing Charlotte Church things, being a celebrity. And then I get this call. It was her manager, like, are you coming? I was like, to what? It's like, Charlotte's down at the venue, are you ready? So I had to just leg it straight in the car and just get down there. And it is a random one. Why would Charlotte Church want to learn to DJ? And I think the plan for her, interestingly, she's a real vinyl head.
Really?
I was prepared to teach her on digital medium, so Serato or CDJs. And she was like, I love vinyl. She's got quite a big vinyl collection. I was like, okay, cool. So I packed some records, some instrumental hip hop, and some drum and bass bits. And we were mixing on vinyl in the first lesson. We did eight hours of lessons. And the plan was for her to build a set so that she could go out as Charlotte Church, the DJ. You know, if you're a celebrity, you can use that as leverage to kind of get work. Why not? Yeah, and in the first hour, I had her mixing beat matching drum and bass records.
Wow.
So yeah, she was really good. But she's got a musical ear. She understands timing. Yeah, so we did a block of 8 hours, and then obviously she's a busy woman, and I think other things took over. But for the time we had as lessons, it was really cool. She learned fast, she listened, and she could mix. It's that simple. And she had, I remember we did a lesson at her house, and just looking for, you know, she's into like Dilla and, you know, proper like hip hop, right?
Wow.
So
that's crazy.
Yeah, really good taste. But then she's her studio have worked with like Shay and Jamal. So yeah, she's got a good head for music. Yeah. Respect to Charlotte Church.
For sure. How do you feel about celebrity DJs? Do you have any opinions on celebrity DJs?
you don't want to know my opinions.
Oh, I do.
No,
We do.
so oh man, my opinions on like DJing as a whole, and because a lot of what we've talked about is like the rite of passage, okay, and like earning your stripes, and it is disheartening, when you've done all the work, to see people who can literally just bypass you,
Take shortcuts.
Yeah. So DJing is seen as, I'd say, it's one of those things you can bolt on to if you are of a certain celebrity status. Do you want to do the such and such from whatever band DJ set? So I'm kind of part of the problem and the solution in the fact that I've kind of taught people to do that, but unfortunately that's where the market is. It's you might have a member of the Libertines doing a DJ set, right? They're not DJs, and they're just pressing play and pause and getting on the mic and hyping people up. But if that's what the crowd want to see, if it's their fans, then maybe it's a snapshot of the kind of their musical tastes and what they like. So you can look at it in like negative ways, or you can kind of say, well, they're playing to their fan base, and it's a way for them to do shows at a cheaper rate, to smaller venues perhaps, and the fans get to see their band member, celebrity, I don't know, Jamie Oliver DJ set. Can you imagine?
I don't want to imagine.
Hugh Fernley Whittingstall DJ set. Or,
man,
Ben Fogle DJ set.
Can you imagine?
It makes I can. So a lot of people again will say, well, it frustrates me that highly skilled DJ. I've ticked many boxes, yet you've got to have that platform of fame to be able to get up there, and people are they're making the best of what they have got. It's like people who come off Celebrity Love Island. They're squeezing as much money as they can out of like the fame that they've got. So I understand why they do it. If you're someone from a musical background, I think it makes more sense. You understand music. You might play some of your own tunes in your DJ set. So it has, the problem, it has watered down what a DJ is. I think it's because of the technology available to people now. Like we said, you can just bypass the hard work and do a pretty reasonable job to a bunch of people who are your fan base. So a quick story, a friend of mine, I used to work for Sennheiser headphones, and a friend of mine was their like A&R kind of guy who had loads of celebrity contacts. And the plan was for him to feed me people coming off of like Celebrity Love Island, whatever I don't know what these TV shows are, but people would come to me that do a 2-week crash course and build an hour DJ set so they could go out as Matey from The Only Way Is Essex, right? DJ set. Right. And obviously the more people doing that, it's a double-edged sword. I'm making money from that, but is it infringing on kind of the opportunities for up and coming DJs, or is it in like a little bubble of its own, celebrity bubble world of its own?
Can you separate the two?
It's not. Yeah, can you separate the two in your mind? So, I don't know if it's like a cardinal sin. It's not. There are worse things in the world. But if I can, be part of, I'd always teach people to be good. So, for example, with Charlotte Church, I got her to a point where she could actually mix. So I have there's a threshold of skill that has to be achieved before, someone gets let loose, right? So, and I'd also say that if someone was obnoxious and awful, then it doesn't matter how much money it's just not going to work, right? So, yeah. But then, you see like your kind of Paris Hilton DJ sets, is that a good thing? I don't know. Yeah, but it is, the age of technology has allowed this. So, like, when it was pure vinyl, less people would be able to do that as celebrities, you know, because the skill set, the bar was so high. Technology has allowed people.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
It's opened the doors. Also, I mean, I can quickly tell you the best analogy I have for it is technology is amazing because it means I don't have to carry records around, bags and bags of records. It's incredible. And it used to be that, like, it was like kind of like the nerds and the geeks, you know, who were into record collecting and just spending hours in their bedroom scratching and mixing and learning the craft, right? Those are the ones who would succeed. But because the technology is so good now, the guys with the personalities, the big personalities, you know, like the sports jocks in school, you know, it's those guys who are like, hey, I can be like the sports jock DJ, right? And
right.
Those guys can succeed, where before it was only like the nerds and like the bedroom dorks who would, you know, like myself, just practice, mix. The personality was important, but it wasn't the main thing. But it's like, because DJing is super accessible, you can, bolting on top of that, you know, personality, on top of that celebrity, yeah, maybe it's become a bit too throwaway, so the other factors override, like someone being technically amazing, but, you know, if they can get on the mic and just, you know, hype everybody up, that's more important than the craft, maybe.
Hello, this is Parker. And my memory of Killer Tomato was of this young gun coming up behind me. That's how I felt. I was like, oh no, I was sandwiched between, like, I don't know, like Optimus Prime and Kazu was up there, and then I was coming up the rear, and then you had like Killer Tomato came on the scene, and he had the same, I saw a little bit of myself in him, in that he had mad focus on like wanting to be an incredible scratch DJ and do the whole DMC thing. And again, I think he came at the end of my time in Cardiff, but I just remember being scared of him. Like, you know, when younger people come up and you're like, oh no, I'm gonna have to move on, because he's taken it to another level. He had that. He was fierce on the cut. It was like aggressive on the cut, and obviously then he became a massive bodybuilder, which kind of like added to his strength on his cuts. It was like incredible. But yeah, I really rated him. He was a really good scratch DJ, and I think he's still in Cardiff, isn't he? I haven't seen him for years, but yeah, he was dope, man.
I've got to ask you about this cup of tea you had with Westwood. How does that happen? How does that come about?
Oh man, a cup of tea. That's so random. I totally forgot about it. So I'm going to sound super cynical, but like the BBC does this thing whereby they invite people from outside of London, the regions, you know, from Wales, from up north, from the places that are not London, to come up and showcase what they do. So it was me and Meta Beats. Shay came from Wales, and we were kind of put in this room with all these other people from across the country who were, you know, like similar level, had done some things, had not like fully broken through.
Sure.
And, you know, Westwood was kind of like wheeled in, and we were all given like a cup of tea, and, you know, he kind of went around the room and like we all kind of told him his story, and you know, took lots of pictures of us hanging out at Westwood and whatnot, and then we went home. So I was slightly disenfranchised by the whole, like, the sincerity of the experience. I thought it was more of like a box ticking exercise of, let's get people up from the provinces to the big city, and, you know, we can help these guys on their career. You know, You know what Westwood's like. He's you either love him or you hate him, don't you?
Yeah.
You know, he kept referring to meta beats as just meta. Meta, yo, Meta, tell me about your album, Meta.
Love it.
It's meta beat. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So it was a learning experience. It was disheartening to go up there, and we saw the process of how like Radio 1 playlist all their music that's going to be on the A list for the radio, and it's literally 3 people in a room who choose, right, this song's going to be successful, this song's going to be successful. And I was naive at the time, and I thought, you know, things organically work their way up to the top. And I kind of saw this process that was just, it was Radio 1 success by committee. And I found that disheartening. Maybe I was just naive and young, but so yeah, that was the cup of tea with Westwood. Yeah, that was it was kind of them to invite me up there, and it was cool to see Radio 1, you know, functioning as it does. However, I thought the systems in place were not. I couldn't see how people made it, you know, through to the top. I was like, how on earth do you manage to win this game? It's a rigged game. So yeah, maybe I was optimistic, perhaps.
Do you still feel that way? There is a rigged
that it's
game?
a rigged game in music.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think currently it's the best time in history to, if you're an independent artist, to be successful. So I'll go down this rabbit hole just quickly. So before, you have gatekeepers at every stage. So at Radio 1, there's a group of people who decide whether or not you can go on the radio. Maybe you have people at the record label who decide if you can have a record deal. People on A&R type people, you know, who decide whether or not, you know, your demo is good enough. So now with the internet, you can just bypass all the gatekeepers and go direct to your fan base. You know, you can use CD Baby, one of the publishers. You can just upload your music to the internet. You can be on Spotify in like 2 weeks, and you can go straight to the people who want to listen to your music, which is amazing. So I think it's the best time in history as an artist to, whatever music you make, to connect with your fan base directly. You know, and people see Spotify and all these streaming platforms as like hugely negative because they don't pay very much per stream. But I think people don't look at the bigger picture. It's like your music, if it does go, it can be out in front of people in Africa, in America, in Asia. Like, think of the alternative. How would you get your music to someone, say someone in South Africa listened to the song that you'd written? You'd have to put it on a CD, you know, in the old days, and literally by hand give it to them, or you'd have to speak to like a radio plugger and say, hey, can you play my stuff on South African radio? Now, the algorithms are so powerful on these platforms that, yes, they don't pay very much, but the reach, if you go big, or if you know, you find your fan base is instant, and it's direct to the listener. So there's no one in between telling you can't or you can do this song or what or not. So yeah, I think the answer to the question is that it's an amazing time to be a musician if you kind of accept the rules of the game, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. It's a blessing if you're able to tap into what you're talking about.
Yes, totally. But equally, I can see how everybody is making music, and it is also, you know, there's a lot of people, but the optimist in me says that good music will always, you know, rise to the top. So yeah, there's never been a better time to make music, I think.
And it's all dependent how you see through that lens yourself.
Totally. And so using social media platforms, Instagram, TikTok is to some it's a modern hellscape, but again, you can be in front of people who would never, come to your local town or listen to you in an instant. So that's pretty powerful.
When you look at your contributions so far, what strikes you the most?
Hopefully, like I've contributed like a level of integrity and professionalism, and hopefully like just been an example for other people to say, if you try and you work hard, you can achieve great things. So whether or not that's with like the teaching or like doing DJ battles, working with other artists, the Jay-Z and Beyonce thing, I take that in my stride, and people often remind me that that's not a normal thing, that doesn't come around very often. So hopefully, yeah, the contribution is along the lines of you can, if you work hard enough, you can achieve good things. I'd like to get to a point whereby with DJing in particular that I can pick and choose the DJ sets I want to do. Like this obviously music changes, the scenes change. I'd like to be at a point where I can just have enough kind of work, like recording cuts of people, studio work, that I could not take a step back, but just choose the really fun ones, the cool gigs. So whether or not that's possible, I don't know. I'm still fortunate enough to be doing gigs with the Goldie, Lipman chain. So yeah, it's you never know what's around the corner. So it's just you just keep plugging away, and just things often just kind of fall in your lap sometimes. So the main thing I think is just to stay busy, keep doing stuff, and see what comes your way.